Hi everyone and welcome to the Warhammer podcast. We're your hosts, Jack
and Dan.
and today we're going to be looking at how to deal with that guy in
guy,
Warhammer 40k.
Yeah, yes.
Now, not us, definitely not us,
no.
but that guy.
Yeah, we're going to talk about how to spot that guy, like looking at some of the toxic traits that we think make them, identify them, where you might encounter that guy, because it's more places than you might think. How to deal with that guy, why you shouldn't let that guy stop you from playing.
Yeah.
And also in our Discord, had some really interesting experiences from viewers. Because we like to be a positive podcast, we'll be looking at good and bad examples of sportsmanship there. And obviously talking about some of our experiences a little bit as well.
A little bit of our experiences there, yeah. But when we say that guy, like, what do we mean by that guy?
What do we mean?
Yeah, so I think there's a few, as you mentioned, a very select few. Again, there is a select few number of people out there, but you will most likely come across them in your time playing Warhammer 40k.
Yes, it's I think that's a great context. And I think it's kind of, we'll talk a bit about this later, but it's very much human nature is that you tend to remember bad experiences more than good ones.
Oh, so often.
So the data, like the demographics of like these guys, that guy makes up a very small percentage of Warhammer players.
Yeah.
But because they're such memorable experiences, you remember them.
Well, the things we're laughing about this, and I was going to mention it later on, but again, like these, I always turn these that guys into the butt end of a joke, like 9 times out of 10. It's always like I walk away from the event or whatever, I'm just like, that guy, you should, this. But yeah, so again, like how to spot that guy kind of thing. I think there's a few ways that we've got, so we'll choose back and forfeit.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so the first one for me is a slow play or abusing the chess clock.
Yeah, this comes up a lot, and a few of our regular commenters mentioned this. Our friend Barry from the Wildlings has experienced this a couple of times as well.
It just sucks because like when someone slow plays, it sucks because you are both affected, because regardless of the outcome of the game, if you end the game, say turn 2 or even turn 3 in turn 3 in most cases, the opponent might win only by like 5 points because the game has not went on that long, and those 5 points might only be like 45 to like 35 or something like that, and then what that means is even though that player might win or even you might win, just because you win, your points are still quite low.
Yes.
So the next bracket, if you were trying to get up there in a competitive scene, your bracket will be you'll be on the lower end of the bracket, so you won't even have a chance to win. So slow playing benefits nobody in my eyes.
No, I fully agree, and I think I can still be a slow player. My opponents at the last RT2 were quite patient with me because I was running NID, so I hadn't run for a while. But generally speaking, it's about intent. It comes like if someone's deliberately trying to use that time to their advantage, then and also with the chess clock, a chess clock should solve that because each person gets a divided time, but you will find people that accidentally forget to put the chess clock on when it's their turn, so they're running down your time. Yeah. And then how much of your time have you lost, etc.
The chess clock we'll talk about more later. It can be good, but again, you have to also maintain the chess clock yourself. Like if they don't click it, make sure you click it for them. Yeah, that's probably something I would say.
Yeah, it's a habit. You've got to get into a habit, haven't you? One that really I think is a very much an identifier is being argumentative or confrontational.
Yes.
And this is kind of attitudinal. Like it's what I mean by this is it doesn't mean you can't ask questions. You can still ask.
How dare you?
You can still double check or ask questions of your opponent, and you phrase it in a nice, polite, and upbeat way. You're like, are you sure you can do that, or can I just check the rule about that?
It's a learning game. There's so many things out there that you'll not know.
Yeah.
So simply asking the questions is fine, but again, it's how you ask it is how it comes across.
But if your opponent is being argumentative and saying, you can't do that,
you can't do that,
or is even being aggressive and confrontational, that is a bullying tactic, because some people in any walk of life, when faced with that level of confrontation, escalation, will back down just because they want to avoid it. And so it can be, you will find players that use that as, it's like psychological warfare, basically. They'll use that as a tool in their box to try and bully you into agreeing to things that you shouldn't agree to.
Absolutely. And then what that means is that they're then just kind of cascades into more little things. Like one other thing I was going to mention was they'll then complain or like mention or argue about every little detail that's out there. So they'll cover the big ones probably first, and then when they know they've kind of got you, I feel like they'll continually do it.
They'll keep pushing.
Now, I've not experienced this from my understanding, but I have had my army questioned a lot. And now I was a very new player. I've maybe said it, maybe got a rule wrong, and then from there they then question everything I'd done.
Yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
oh God, is he?
It's like a tactic to unsettle the player,
Yeah,
isn't it?
and I was questioning myself,
Yeah.
like overthinking other
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah, it's not nice. Don't do that.
It's not great.
Good. What else have you got then?
For me, the big one for me, and I'll be honest, sometimes I'm guilty of this as well, but I'll try and be as transparent as possible.
Yes.
But the gotcha moments.
Oh, yes.
So
everybody hates this one.
Everyone hates it. So I always ask at the start of the game, like, have you got any gotcha moments? Now, when we say gotcha moments, this, I guess, could be easily translated to like maybe something like fights first. Maybe you have a unit that fights first and you don't tell your opponent this.
Yeah.
Now, there's an argument there saying, should you tell your opponent about this? But side question, I would say for now.
Yeah. I mean, that's go on, carry on.
I was going to say, for me, it's like, if I ask you before the game, if I ask you if you've got any fights first, I think it's just, it should be that you should tell them. Like, yeah, this unit here fights first. Like Von Weinliebers in NIDS, for example, the latest tournament we went to, I said specifically, these units right here have fights first.
Yes.
Two of them are going to be going up the field. One of them's holding my backfield objective.
Yes.
They have fights first. I will try and remind you as the game goes on.
Yeah.
But just FYI, they have fights first.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on it. And alongside that, maybe like, I think the Tranifex has the damage going from a 6 to a
once
0.
per game you can reduce the damage to 0. Yeah,
I wouldn't say that's so much of a gotcha moment, but it's a nice to be like, I have an ability to change damage from 6 to 0.
Thousand Suns can do it all the time, can't they?
That's
like
true.
Once per turn or something.
So then they shouldn't really need to tell you all the time because again they've got it built in.
But it's important to know these things, and it can be sometimes it can be little things like, Shalaxi reduces the number of attacks by 1. If you've planned to put a melee unit into Shalaxi to kill her, you've done the basic maths in your head about obviously the dice are the dice, but you can say on an average dice roll or a slightly below average dice roll, I'm going to kill Shalaxi with this, and then you find out that your attacks are reduced by a third or something. That's a gotcha.
It is. Now again, should have been mentioned at the very start of the game?
I think it has to be. A very good. I think as a bare minimum at the beginning of the game, a good sportsmanship is, are you sure you want to do that? Because remember, I can do this.
Yeah. Now, I think there comes to the point where you don't have to tell your opponent every little detail during the game of your army.
No.
Because there could be one point of being like, oh, I'm going to move here, but if you move here, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this. It's kind of like mentioning at the start, that's going to be a big gotcha moment. Then I think you've kind of covered it.
I think so. And it's the only, we do tend to learn by mistake. So, I'm not going to complain if an opponent's told me at the beginning and then hasn't reminded me and I've forgotten. That's on me, and I'll just have to do better at remembering next time.
Exactly.
I would prefer it if they said, actually, have you forgotten I can do this? But they don't have to.
No. Exactly.
I mean, there was a recent experience. Somebody played a guy at a tournament and said that the guy had basically just, unless you ask him the specific question, he would not tell you his rules. So if you said, have you got fight first? He would say yes, and it's on these units.
Right.
But if he also had the ability to reactive move, if you hadn't asked him about that, he wouldn't tell you.
Right.
And I think that is, that's just not right in my opinion.
But I guess that is the question he asked though, right? I know that's
I mean, it's very broad to say like, what do I need to know about? Because if you've got a particularly janky army, then you could, you get out this list like this.
Yeah, you see, for me, I think it's the wording of the question. It's more a case of if you ask them specifically, do they got fights first? The answer is going to be yes or no, whatever. Yes. But it's more just a case of, well, if I move here, what? You could simply ask, what options do you have if I move here?
Yes, or at the beginning of the game, what if somebody? That's the challenge, isn't it? If it's in game, you need to remember it. Like, if I move here, what can you do?
Yeah.
Or it's at the beginning of the game, you say, what things do I need to be aware of in each unit? Then they should tell you.
Yeah.
Most players, like, if you've been using an army for at least a couple of games, even bare minimum, you probably know what they do.
Yeah.
So for Necrons, I can tell you this unit can move, shoot, move. This unit can. This guy has got -1 damage, etc. We can reel it off as you go through your army. This is what this does. And so a player should be able to tell you as they run through their army what each unit does.
Yeah.
Then you can argue it's up to you to remember. But if they're not running through that and you have to ask them the specific questions, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I think maybe if you're short on time and you can't go through the list at the start, maybe just agreeing as we run through the game, let's just remind each other. I think that's, again,
it's just about,
prerequisites to the game.
It is, you have to, otherwise it's a gotcha, isn't it?
It is.
That player could argue, well, you didn't ask me that specific question, so
Yeah.
but I still think that's a gotcha. Yeah.
With the middle finger, they were like,
Yeah. Let us know what you think about that in the comments, because it varies from on your perspective of the game. But I think, you know, we're roughly in the same position on that, but not quite.
Yeah,
so you can see there's differences of perspective and opinion already.
Yeah, because again, you don't want to like have to it slows down the game, you can argue and such. So like for me, it's like, if you've told me once and I fail to remember, that's fine. But if you haven't told me at all,
that's not fine. Fully agree. Good.
Right, moving on, because again, that we could be on that for ages, to be fair. So yeah, Dan, anything else for you?
I think abusive movement is a really big one, and I've seen this from players who are very good and don't need to do it, like players who would beat me hands down. But I've seen people be a little bit free with the movement. Like, that can move 14 inches, and you know, as an experienced player, you can kind of eyeball it, and you're like, or even watch as the tape measure goes out.
Like if they say they've got a 14-inch move and they clearly move like
15,
you know, 14. It's just like, well, or like it's where the ones where they'll measure and then eyeball it, be like, oh yeah, that's like 15, and then they'll put the dice measure down, they'll look away, pick up the model, then move it. It's like, hold on, it's like, at least put your finger there and then move it to
or put a dice there or something. I'm super precise about my movement, and I like my opponent to be as well.
I like to make sure I get it done right, because again, movement,
millimeters can matter in terms of charges and all that kind of thing, so it's really important.
Well, I remember having a conversation with one of the top teams in the Northeast. I forgot who they were there now, but they were talking about like prizes for Warhammer tournaments and whatnot, and they were talking about how, like, you know, Warhammer 40K will probably never get to the point of like esports gaming, because if they did, they would have to then use like centimeters or millimeters to measure everything. And again, everyone's so, you know, just loose with their movement and such. If there's £500,000 on the table, you know, you would be like, that's not, you know, that's not exactly 14 inches, you know, move that back, or that's probably why we're never going to get that stage, I would say.
It was never intended as a competitive game, and it's you know, and it was basically in inches, because it came out in the 80s, and Rick Priestley was pre-decimalization, so he was still using inches. But and it also made it you know, easier to translate to America. But if you, it just. It's very rare that somebody will say, I've got a move of 8 and then try and move them 10, because that's it's more about gaining that little bit, particularly melee units, gaining that little bit that puts you within the next inch down. So instead of being outside of 9, you're within 9, so it's an 8-inch charge instead of a 9. It's that kind of gamesmanship.
Exactly. Gotta be careful of that one.
And one just before I quickly move on, another one that I've seen largely it's from newer players, because it usually gets beaten out of them quite quickly. But measuring from the back of the stand to the and then placing them from the front, so you gain like the stand. In addition to your movements,
got to be careful of that one. It's a very common mistake a lot of people make when they first start 40K. So sometimes it is just a reminder. But you just got to measure from the front to the front, or from the back to the back. Makes it perfect sense.
Good. What about you then? What else have you got?
Another thing for me is hiding dice rolls.
Oh, yes.
Now, I was guilty of this in the past. I'll be honest, hands up. At the end of the day, it was just easy to roll your dice into something, you know, because again, if you roll your dice and it goes miles, and it's a nightmare to get. So having them to roll into something was just convenient for me. But the more you play and the more you kind of see your dice rolls, it's not convenient for the game.
No,
like seeing your opponent's dice rolls just gives you that extra flexibility of seeing what they're rolling.
I'm a nightmare for rolling dice. They go everywhere. So if I'm rolling on the table and they do go behind terrain, I will very deliberately put my finger on it and then move it out so that my opponent can see there's been no manipulation.
If you're like,
because that is your opponent. Because there's two aspects, isn't there? Number one is you will roll behind terrain, and your opponent will say, well, that's 2 5s and a 6, and then pick the dice up before you can see them.
Yeah, don't like that.
Which is that's infamous. That was caught on stream at a few years ago. Somebody
don't call me out like that.
No, it wasn't you. No. It was a guy I ended up playing at Warhammer Fest, actually.
I remember that. Yeah, because you left that and you were like,
that wasn't where
he got caught.
Where he got caught, he was caught in a bigger tournament doing it. But he was definitely.
Was he banned or something like that?
He was banned for a while.
I thought he was. Yeah,
I think it might have been LGT or something like that.
Imagine getting banned.
I know. But yeah, so and then the so the first one is picking up before you see them, and then the other one is manipulating the dice when you go to pick it, move it. Just knock it from a 3 to a 5 or something. Yeah.
Be like, oh yeah, all 6s. Yeah, all 6 saves. I made it. Don't worry. I'll pick them up now though. Sorry. Well, sorry for the audio listeners. Probably just got ridiculed.
Someone in headphones just screamed at us.
Sorry about that. That's my fault. But yeah, so dice rolls, don't hide them. Just keep them in the open.
Good.
Point as much as you can, just to make it easy and whatnot. Anything else for you?
Just getting rules wrong in the favour is still a problem. In some cases, it's usually at the more competitive end where we've seen examples. It seems to have happened less as 10th has gone on, but when 10th was a new edition, particularly, there was people that were giving rules to their units that didn't exist or were better than the actual rules, etc. And I think even this is a tricky one, right? Because as you mentioned before, anyone can get a rule wrong. And I get rules wrong
all the time.
Sometimes to my advantage. But what I'll do, if it's to my advantage, I will then try and correct it. So I played a game ages ago against our friend Lee where I mentioned this before, where I thought I had a 4-up feel no pain on my pain engines in my Drakari army. And Lee was like, "Are you sure about that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm absolutely sure." And then he asked me again. He said, "Really sure?" And I went and checked the data card, and it's a 5-up. So I just took some of them off the table, because I'm like,
to make up for what you've done.
Yeah. You probably would have killed those, so I need to compensate you by at least that much to make sure that I'm not cheating. But so that's not bad sportsmanship. That's just getting it wrong. Everyone makes mistakes.
And at least you didn't argue, be like, "Oh, well, that sucks." And then it's like you didn't take models off. But in this situation, you took them off.
You've got to rectify it if you made a mistake. I think it's the only fair thing to do.
Probably about that one, I had around some in my tournament where I rapid ingress some Scopec destroyers. I'm a massive fan of right now. And I asked the tank guy, I was like, "What's the range on that tank?" He goes 18. I was like, "All right, fantastic." I was like, "All the weapons 18?" He goes, "Yeah, all 18." So I put 18 inches away. So I couldn't get shot. So I was going to be safe because obviously it was the end of his movement, so he couldn't shoot us. And then time comes around, he shoots all the weapons, he gets to the tank and goes, "All right, I'm going to shoot the big guns at this." And I was like, "Oh, so sorry." I was like, "What was the range on those weapons?" And he goes, 24. I was like, "You said 18 before?" And he goes, "Oh, it's 18 for these ones." He goes, "Oh, I did say it was thingy all around." I was like, "All right, well, look, 2 options. One, I'll reposition these.
So they're out of 24?
So out of 24 or in a different position. Or 2, you shoot at something else instead of those." And he took the one where you'll shoot something else instead.
That's good.
So it was nice to have options in that situation.
That's the right way to resolve that.
I think it was just the easiest way for both of us. He knew he made a mistake. Maybe we could have looked at the data card at that time, but it is what it was.
But if you're doing it deliberately, some people do, then that's you've got. It's definitely
you're that guy.
It's definitely happens a lot more than people think from that guy. That they will manipulate the rules to their advantage.
Now, a one for me, right? This is going to be very controversial, so please come at me in the comments. I'm ready for I'm ready for it. I've played in many tournaments where a unit wasn't painted. Shock, right? Minus 10 points. Whack it on. I don't do that. I just give them the 10 points. I'm there to roll dice. I'm there to have fun, and maybe this is where divide might come in, and I would love to hear what people's thoughts are on this in the comments. But if I'm versing someone who doesn't have their army fully painted, now of course, as long as he's not taking the mick, I'm talking 6 out of 9 units on painted, I might.
In some events, we went to one where it was specifically in the rules says that you can bring unpainted models and you don't suffer the penalty.
Perfect, absolutely fine. But in a tournament scene where your models have to be painted, if one unit kind of wasn't painted, I'm not that kind of guy to be like, "Oh, well, that unit hasn't got 3 colors on, let's get rid of it," kind of thing. If most of the army's there or thereabouts, or even not even based to thereabouts, but painted really well, I'll still give them the 10 points.
I'm not that bothered either way. I'll always give people 10 points.
But that's what I would. Again, controversial. Some people might say, "Well, it's in the rules," which they're not wrong. But I just wouldn't be that guy.
No, I fully agree. I think that's a good one. And you've also got another one here, which I absolutely I've probably been slightly guilty of this in the past, but I try and but not to this extent.
You don't realize you're doing it. So this last one, we've all probably done it, and you've probably not even done it in a meant to do it in a negative way. But you'll come up to a table, you'll put your army down, and you'll see across the table, I don't know, some chaos demons, and you literally just visually and verbally go, "Oh, really? That army? Oh, what's the list? Oh,
I hate playing
legions of excess. Here we go." And you're already starting the game off to a negative start in my eyes. And again, I'll be guilty of it, but you do have to realize like it might like demoralize the player kind of thing.
It just puts a bad vibe on the whole game if you start that way. And it's we talk a lot about mindsets in this, and without I don't want to be too cheesy or whatever, but even if you're coming up against a list that you know from a faction that you know is going to typically batters you, you approach it from like, right, well, let's see if I can do better this time. Can I score 60 points instead of last time I scored 45 or something, and just try, you set yourself other goals apart from winning the game. I mean, unless you are like a world-class player, you're probably not going to be winning that tournament anyway.
Exactly.
So don't be that guy.
Exactly. Just don't do it. It's just like, have fun. Look, it's a difficult army. Phrase it differently. Be like, oh, this is a tough army. I've seen the list before. I've played it. I've struggled against it, but I'm looking forward to playing. Just a complete vibe switch. I mean, I played against a Death Guard player in the last league at our club, and at the time the indirect fire from those Plagueburst crawlers was really obnoxious into my Dark Eldar. Because I can't. A lot of Dark Eldar was based around being able to hide, pop out, shoot, and then hide. Shoot, scoot. And the guy, and I was like, I'm like, I'm looking forward to this, but I don't usually do very well against this. I said, I struggle for these reasons, so I'm just going to see what I can do type thing, because you're a hard counter to me, so I'm expecting you to win this, but I'm going to try and give you a game. There we go.
And I think that's the way you deal with it.
Much better, because you've told them that you're going to struggle against it, so that the player might have some benefits or might have some ideas.
It's fine to say that, and I think it doesn't. It frames it in a way that says, this is going to be a tough matchup for me, and I'm going to articulate that, but I'm going to do it in a positive way rather than a negative one. And and it just then that set it like that. Me and that guy he was a nice bloke. We had a good game. He did spank us because it went as predicted.
As you thought it was.
I did better than when I'd done previously against Death Guard, so I was pleased with my performance.
Good.
But generally speaking, it's that then becomes a much nicer experience for both players. Rather than one player that's like dumping all that negativity on you before you've even rolled a dice. It's not much fun, is it?
It's because then like it off puts you to be like, oh, like, what can I say? What shall I say? Am I going to annoy him any further? I've not even said anything. He's already annoyed at my list.
Do you think sometimes it's a bit like that psychological warfare we were talking about earlier? Like it's trying to put you in the position where they want you to, they want you to go a bit easy on them.
I mean, it's to some people it certainly could do. I mean, if it was me, I'm kind of like, it sucks for you. Like I might just call them out for it, but like I guess some people might not have that energy or that tone to be able to do it. So I think it certainly could.
A lot of people do get bundled up with it, and I've been guilty of this in the past, where you get so focused on winning that that coming up against an army like that, you just feel like you've got no chance against it. But it's just you've just got to not be that negative about it.
It's an army at the end of the day. I remember when I've done when the Necrons got the big revamp in 10th, I brought a full army of Catans.
Oh yeah,
the looks I got from every opponent that I came across, and I owned it. I was like, that's it. This is the list. It's a legal list. Don't come at me. Like,
it's very much a stat check. It's like, can you deal with this or not? Isn't it?
Vibe check.
And I think
and then a lot of them failed that.
The more you go to these events, and I hope it's not just the Northeast, but that's kind of part of the game. Like at a tournament, people will be like, they might say that's a filthy list, but it's almost like, oh, well done, that's a filthy list.
It's not like, oh, I've never considered that to be even a list.
No.
Well done.
What you don't get or you shouldn't get is like, how dare you bring a competitive list to a competitive game? What?
What do you mean? Are you not here to win? Like, that's what I'm here for. It's like, so you brought a fluffy list.
Well, that's the other thing is we haven't put that on the list, but sometimes you're like, oh, I've just brought this fluffy list, and then they reel through it, and you're like, I know this army. That's the filthiest list you could bring.
The downplay of their list, be like, oh well, I've got these guys. They don't do too well, and then just roll like gods for the rest of the game.
But I think those are all. I think if there's any more traits that we've missed there, let us know. But I think those are the big ones. And
sorry if we've just called like half of you guys out.
I think that we've got to.
It's funny. It's good to laugh about.
Exactly. What about where you might encounter that guy?
Do you want to start off on this one? Because I've got one, you've got two.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can encounter that guy at gaming clubs, but this tends to be rare. And I think the
Yes.
reason it's rare is because most gaming clubs are very good at self-policing. So if you have somebody who is that guy, somebody will take them to one side and have a quiet word with them. And
back in the alley.
Yeah.
Get your models out.
Yeah.
Go.
I think at club level, it tends to be more misunderstandings about player competence.
Yeah.
So if you've got a new player that comes in and says, I play 40k, I'm looking for a game, and you say, all right, I'm free this Friday, do you want to play casual or competitive? And they say, oh, I'd quite like to play competitive. So you bring your 5 Catan list and table them in turn 3, and then they're going to go, oh, that was, that was a filthy game or whatever, but you
asked for it.
They asked for
Yeah.
it. You set the parameters. If they'd said casual and you just brought a fluffy list with like 80 warriors in it or something,
Sure, bit of fun.
It's a different game, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But if so I think it's very often, sometimes you can a less experienced player that asks for a competitive game might feel like they've been that guide when they haven't. It's just a misunderstanding.
Yes.
So just be aware of that.
I know we, in our little circle, when we look for games in our little cluster, we do say, do you want a little fun game or a little competitive game? Sometimes you have an idea for a filthy list that you want to try.
Yeah.
So you say, I've got this dirty list. I want to give it a try. And then they bring their dirtiest list, and then that is fun. You know, you might get tabled in turn 2. It's like, holy crap, my list wasn't as filthy as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and it's almost the default in ours is dirty lists. Like there's a couple of our friends that don't bring fluff. Don't know what the word fluffy means.
It's not in their vocabulary.
No. And that's absolutely fine.
You know who it is. You know who you are.
That's absolutely fine because that's what we want. And I'm
on board.
Yeah,
I'm all
it's
for
about that social contract and setting those expectations. So that's my first one. And yours is
it's tournament.
Yeah.
So as daft as it sounds, you will see these at tournaments. I think that's where we've typically seen all of our people. Now it's funny because we haven't been to loads of GTs, but we've been to a few.
Yeah, been a few.
And I don't really see these guys at GTs. Now, I find this weird. And again, this might just be down to the amount of GTs I've been to, but towards my stats, I've seen them that guy at casual tournaments because what I've found is I feel like they think they can get away with it easier.
Yes.
Because the casuals don't know the game the in and out of the game.
A big GT, the level of the player there is, generally speaking, it's going to be hard to get away with that stuff. Yeah, but I think you're exactly right. It's more like your tournaments organised by your club or your gaming store.
People will sneak in from, you've not heard of them before, they'll sneak in for a filthy list, and then they'll just they'll do all those little tactics to try and get as best in there as possible. And that's just because, again, I feel like the players who are there are newish to the game, or maybe just starting off on their tournament scene, and they want to try and get a bit more out there. And I think that's what when we talk about tournaments online and people not wanting to go to them, I feel like that's what people initially think that they're going to experience as soon as they go to these tournaments, and that's what puts them off.
That leads really nicely into the last point I wanted to make, because it is gaming stores. I think gaming stores, don't want to call out all gaming stores here, but there are quite a few gaming stores that, in my personal experience, that have that guy who exists to either exists
to win.
So he will welcome a new player in onto the Discord or the WhatsApp or whatever and be like, let's have a game, and then bring a horrible list and table somebody that's never rolled dice in
it's
that
like,
way before.
You want to learn the game? I'll play with you. And then just minces your game
and
on. It's like, hold on.
That is a problem. And I think one of the reasons that is more difficult to police for gaming stores than gaming clubs is because very often that guy spends money in that store.
Yeah.
So if you're the owner of a local gaming store, most of which are not millionaires, let's be honest, because it's something, obviously it's a business, but you do it out of love for the hobby.
Oh, of course.
You put lots of extra hours in,
time, effort,
it's which we really appreciate. But if someone's dropping £100 a week in your store or a couple £100 a month,
you're not going to kick them out.
It's hard to have that conversation, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, some people probably would.
Definitely some will,
At the same time, it's like you don't want to upset your best customer.
No.
To some degree.
No. So it's that can be a difficult conversation to have for local gaming store owners, and I think that's why these people you will find more of that guy in that environment. And also, as you say, it's more likely that they'll be coming to those casual tournaments at those kind of environments as well, because they can get away with more in that than they can, because your casual more casual tournaments don't tend to have the same, no disrespect, but they don't have the same level of player there, and don't have tournament officials, so you can't go and call a judge in.
Judges are a good shout.
so that there's a lot more opportunity to be that guy in those circumstances.
Very true. This is very true. So about that guy mentality. How do you deal with that guy?
Yeah, well, that's a big one, isn't it? I mean, I think if you're in that environment in a store or a club, if you haven't got a tournament, a TO or a judge to rely on, is just ask other people.
Yeah.
And we'll often do that even now, like if there's a dispute in a rule. Had a very experienced tournament player that didn't realise that measuring for shooting was from any part of the model.
Yeah.
He thought it was base to base. And I was like, no, it definitely isn't. But I had, rather than us argue about it or roll a dice because I knew it was right, I went, you just go and get somebody else. That they trust.
Sense check it.
Yeah, just sense check it. There's almost always more experienced players than you in a club setting, and they're always usually happy to give advice.
Absolutely. I mean, again, we've talked about before about getting rules simply wrong or just simply forgetting what a rule actually does.
Yeah.
I mean, day one, game 3, I'm knackered.
The mental load.
You're 7-8 hours in.
Yeah.
You're gonna forget or you'll misplay or something like that. So just asking someone else who's also very tired is a good way of keeping everyone.
I mean, definitely, don't ever feel that you're being pressured into something on an individual basis, particularly with that psychological stuff we're talking about. Just take a step back and go and ask somebody and say, "Is this okay?"
Exactly.
I'm not comfortable with this.
Exactly. For me, the deal that guy, especially in a tournament scene, I think just there's been so many times I've been in a tournament where it hasn't directly happened to me, but I've seen something happen or something's went down, and then I've heard a player go, "Tell you what, I'm just going to go let that judge know that there's been some issues on this table." And then what they'll do is they'll float around that table, and it's really good because majority of games in 40k will go fine without needing a judge.
Absolutely.
So most of the time the judges are there just for those odd occasions. So if you ask a judge just to be like, "Oh, would you mind just like observing our game or just coming and have a quick little, just stay close to our table because I might need you a few times," they will do that, and they won't put pressure on you or put pressure on the opponent, or they won't take sides. They'll just observe. And if something is being misplayed or misdone, they'll pass that on to other judges just to make sure that everyone's aware of it. And that's not going to go against the person who's doing it, because again, that guy might just be getting something wrong accidentally. So getting that corrected early doors will stop and make the tournament flow a lot better. So for me, let a judge know, not because you feel like you're being misplayed or this guy is a toxic player. It's more just a case of, if you tell him, the judge, early, the game and tournament will run smoother for other players.
I think it comes back to that. That's a really good point in terms of it helps other players. But I think it comes back to that kind of bullying and psychological aspects of it. Is if somebody is displaying that guy traits, the sooner a judge intervenes, typically speaking, that bullying behaviour will then be retracted because they can't get away with it,
and he'll know he's getting watched to some degree. So he'll be like, "I'm going to back off on this game." It
keeps them a little bit more honest. I think. Yeah, that's a really good point, mate.
I really like that one.
Sorry, I've got a really itchy nose today.
How dare you?
I know.
I ruined the podcast for
these
audience.
I know. He's touching his face again.
How dare
dislike.
I love it.
And I think leading on from that, I think stand your ground.
For sure.
So don't let somebody doormat you. And I think, but
what you said before was a perfect example where you were the guy who thought the rule was wrong, and instead, again, I've mentioned before, where you just do a roll off if you're both unsure, but you were confident you were right.
Yeah, if you're confident you're right, stand your ground.
Stand your ground, and again, just get someone to observe. Yeah.
And I think something I've learned through experience also is to, particularly if you have a short temper, is to remain polite and calm. So even if someone's being confrontational to you, I've been fundamentally accused of cheating at a GT before because the other player felt that I wasn't being honest about my dice rolls and the way the units interacted. Because it had crypto thralls in it, so you were taking saves on different levels and feel no pains and stuff. And perhaps I didn't. It's probably partly on me for not explaining that properly, but I thought I had done. But and it was last game, everyone's tired.
Game 3.
But he basically, and because I was like outraged at that, like he was basically shouting at me saying, "Well, you're cheating," and I was like, almost like, well. You
immediately get defensive,
it's quite a personal attack, isn't it?
Is.
It's on your integrity. Whereas now I've been through that experience, and we ended up talking that through, and we had a perfectly fine game after that. But we went for a cup of tea together and just had a chat, and we both chilled out. But now I will not. I'm going to say this and do it in the future, aren't I? Well, now I will I will remain calm and I'll be like, I don't think that's fair, or we need to stop, hang on a minute and have a discussion, but try and do it in a, don't go back at them, because then that is just going to cause problems.
It just escalates on there, isn't
Well,
it?
I mean, we'll come on to this, but there are rules about this at tournaments, and sometimes if a TO doesn't know you or your opponent, they will just flag both of you. And you will end up being, the TO will start to think that you are that guy.
Yeah.
Because if they've walked into this where you're both going,
yeah.
then they're just going to go, right, well, you can have a yellow card and you can have a yellow card.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And it just is not where you want to be.
That in a way, that's fair. If you've not stooped to their level, but you've engaged with them on that level. It does seem a bit naff, because it's just the surrounding area. People will be like, who are these guys? Is that the Warhammer podcast guy? Look at that guy. He's kicking off again.
What an arsehole. I mean, they'd be right about that.
Yeah.
What about you?
Use a stop clock. Now, I know we've talked about it in the past before about people abusing a stop clock, but using a stop clock, but even in your casual games, just so you learn when to click it, because we'll go back to one of the other that guy moments when they're questioning everything. If they question something, give it on their time.
Yeah.
If you know you're right, be like, oh, if you want to challenge this, unless it's
on
like
your time,
it's on your time. Because unless they're challenging something related, I guess something that's very obscure that you have to explain. Yeah, maybe that could be your time. But if they're questioning like, oh, you can't rapid ingress. Yes, I can. Here's the rule. Do you want to go read it? Yeah. If not, I'll continue my time, and then I'll continue moving, and you can come back to yours.
I think that's a brilliant way of managing it, and it has to come down to a judgment call, because if you've just got somebody that's relatively new or has a genuine question, I'm happy to take that on my time.
Yeah.
If you can specifically see them using it as a tactic, then being that guy, then put them on their time.
Put it on their time.
That's a really good point.
And that might be controversial for a lot of people, being like, well, no, it's in your term, and they're asking a question about what you're doing. But it's when they're abusing those questions. If they're asking you every little detail, make sure that you share that time is what I'd probably say, because it benefits him from understanding it, but also
prevents those that guy experiences.
Exactly.
And I used to hate chess clocks mainly because it's just extra admin, and when you are
an extra thing to think about when you're already in an intense game.
It is a great habit to get into, and the more I play, the more I realise why people use them.
Just the big armies and such.
It's just a good habit to get into, because at tournaments, you have a very set time frame, don't you? And it's hard to get a game in.
It certainly is.
So a chess clock. And learning being on a chess clock will teach you how to play within the time frame.
To follow on from that, the reason why a chess clock is probably good for it, because if you don't use one, you might feel like you rushed yourself. And if you know the time is ticking down, but your opponent has used up a lot of their time when it comes to your turn, you might think, I've got to make up the time. I'm gonna move my guys fast. I'm gonna do my abilities fast, and you'll forget stuff. You'll misplay it. You'll misshoot, and that's because your opponent has done this to put you in this position. So if you use a chess clock, you're only using your time. And if their time runs out when you use a chess clock, they can't do anything apart from make saves. When it comes to their turn, they can't move, they can't shoot, they can't do anything because they're out of their time. It goes straight back to your time in your turn. So it's good. Is it, if you bring a chess clock, are you that guy? I would say no. You are simply wanting to play the game and have your allocated time. That is how I see that.
It can cause more issues than it solves in some edge cases. So I've had an experience once where the guy brought a chess clock. I'm like, I'm happy to play on a chess clock, but then he forgot a couple of times to switch it from me to him. So he ran down my time, promised to give me so many minutes back at the end, but then when we were running out of time, didn't give me those minutes back at the end, which made life a bit awkward.
Now, was that your fault because you didn't change it back when it was your turn?
No, we'd agreed at the beginning that he was going to be in charge of the chess clock. So I'm like, right, if you want to bring a chess clock, that's good. I'm happy to play on a chess clock, but you need to be in charge of it. And that was where we were at with that. Yeah. But you could argue the way to be sure about that is to be in charge of your own chess clock.
True. Bring your own chess clock. Yeah. We got one each. But that's another thing. You got anything else for you?
I think simply insisting on visibility. So we talked about this before, but transparency means a few things. So transparency on movement, watch them when they move, and make them move. And I'm not saying like this, don't be an asshole about it.
Yeah.
And also transparency on dice rolls, as we talked about before. So make sure people are
can visually see.
Good.
So Dan, in terms of why you shouldn't let that guy stop you from playing the game. Any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, you can have 9 good games and 1 bad game, and you remember the bad game. So
always.
And if you've unfortunately are new to the hobby and have been that guy at your local gaming stores, you can feel like quitting, but you shouldn't. You definitely shouldn't let that happen. I think it's important to remember that these people are in the minority, and that you can, if you stick to some of the points that we've just raised there about standing your ground, and politely but firmly insisting on things being done the right way, you can deal with that guy if you play them. But if you do experience that early on, don't be disheartened is the main thing I would say, because it's not normal.
I agree. I think I'm on the same page. Like there are people, there are that guys, they are out there all the time. You will encounter one. I would just say, look, don't let it be this small percentage of people who are out there. Don't let those people be the ones to stop you from enjoying the hobby as what it should be. If you love or like or want to get into tournaments, don't think that every player is like this, because they're not. Most people, if not more than 9 out of 10 people, if not more of them, are there to have a good game and to enjoy the game for what it is.
I was trying to think off the top of my head, and I reckon it's probably about 1% of my games has been I've had that experience.
I've had it once or twice, but I've played like
hundreds of games
there now, pretty much.
So it is rare.
It's super rare.
It's important to talk about it, and it's important as a community that we try and give people the tools to deal with it and to kind of push it further out. Because there's ways to deal. Again, we've mentioned about ways of dealing with it. I think just sticking to those, and also not becoming that guy as well is probably a good thing. Yes, exactly. I think that's as important, isn't it? Is sometimes we can allow our standards to slip, and don't be downhearted if we've reeled off this list and you've gone, well, that's me, that's me, because now you know that what that impact that has. You can change.
You're that guy. Well done.
You can just not be that guy. You have the choice of how you conduct yourself in your games.
I mean, I've mentioned it on a few of these ones. I used to do that because it was my understanding of like, well, this is simple for me. I'm going to roll my dice behind.
Yeah.
Again, you think you're making it,
but you weren't doing it to manipulate the dice, like to cheat.
No.
You were just doing it for ease.
But it's the element of, well, someone doesn't know that what you're doing, and maybe they've had a bad experience and don't trust people who put stuff behind the dice. And again, that negative, you come to a table and you're like, oh, you're playing demons, so then it's Shalanesh guy. You're that guy. You're just back off.
Most people have probably done that at some point in their journey through the
I've
through
definitely
the hobby.
done it.
Yeah,
I've definitely done it.
If you do it, stop doing it is basically what we're saying. I think.
Yeah.
We've also had a few
loads of
anecdotes.
Engagement. Some really interesting ones on this one.
Yeah, so we put it out to our Patreons and YouTube members. Thank you very much, people.
Yes, thank you.
Simon from Rally Point Games and Minds introduced one that when he said this, we were both like, oh, yes.
I literally didn't even consider this a fact, which we've not spoke about up further yet, because I think this one's really important.
And it's dice dropping. And what we mean by this is, can I demonstrate?
Yeah, just don't drop them too much, because it'll...
So it's like, let's say you're going to roll 5 dice, but your opponent accidentally drops 2 of them and then says, oh, I just dropped them because it was a 2 and a 3. But then if they'd rolled them and dropped them, and if they dropped them and they were a 5 and a 6, then they kind of include them in the roll.
Yeah.
And this is actually a lot. Once we started talking about it,
I was like, hold on, I remember people doing this to me quite often, and there's a few friends, you know who you are, who also do this. So I was like, holy crap, he's right. Like, that is a form of like that guy mentality.
I hadn't thought about it.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. So if the numbers is what typically happens is you need to see a pattern of this, because anybody can pick up a handful of dice and drop them. Yeah. But if they are dropping dice and if they are low rolls and then they are picking up and re-rolling them. Yeah. But don't do that when it's a high roll. Then that is a guy. Yeah. Move.
2 ways to combat that: 1, dice tray. Be like, right, all dices have to fall in a dice tray, no matter where they land. Or 2, just call them out. Just like, hey, no, pick that up.
It's true, but I think also, I guess cocked dice kind of come under this as well. So if a dice is if a dice is cocked, I will re-roll it, whatever it is. Yeah. But you have to be firm and fair with yourself and say, even if it's a 6, if it's cocked, it has to be re-rolled. And you can't pick and choose when you re-roll cocked dice. It has to be a flat rule.
100%.
Good.
I think that's a really, really, really good one.
And I think another one Simon talked about was that a lot of people don't realise they're being that guy, which we just kind of touched on that. And they just think it's being in a competitive mindset. And I think that is important to know the difference between being a good competitor and a bad competitor, basically.
Yeah.
That being competitive is not a justification for some of these behaviours. So just be aware of that. And the other thing that Simon rightly brought up, which we talked about before, was don't be, as he put it, an altruistic doormat. Like don't be
Right.
don't be a person that's so nice that you go, oh, this guy's having a bad time because he doesn't like playing into my army, or all of those whingy points that we talked about before, or the aggressive points. Don't be the person that backs down just for an easy life.
God, yeah.
You have to stand up in a fair way.
That's where it comes back to that like that demotivating kind of thing, mentality, where it's like, oh, this army's really hard, I really struggle, and you might go weak on them, and then they turn around and absolutely wipe you. So I think just staying firm to your army, and have a good game.
Good
is what I would say. Very nice one.
Chewy in Patrons, he had an opponent who ignored him. So he said the guy had just been beat by a very famous like top tier player.
Right.
So he'd had a bad experience, but he then kind of took it out. So Chewy then had to, like, because we've talked about before at tournaments, you have to set the terrain up for your game.
Oh my God.
So it's good sportsmanship, obviously, to
do your half.
Do it together, yeah.
Just do at the bare minimum, do your half of the
this
table.
guy just ignored Chewy and was just on his phone scrolling away while Chewy had to set up the whole table. Once this,
I would not have that. I'd be so frustrated.
Yeah, I know. And then he was really icy for the first couple of turns, and then once it became apparent that he was probably going to win the game, he then absolutely U-turned, like completely thawed out, was helping Chewy with the rules, doing really nice, but he was. He'd gone into that game with a really negative mindset.
Not having that. That's Chewy. Feel sorry for you, mate. It's not what you want, especially in a game.
It's happened to me once, and the guy was trying his best to not be that guy, but he was, and to some degree he wasn't, but he would definitely gotten very negative vibes for it because he was a very good player, and in his eyes he would been the terrain layout in game one had undone him, so he felt that like he'd had an injustice done to him, but he was really salty about it. He was trying not to be, but even then I was just like, this is not a good fight.
Like smiling through like gritted teeth, thank you, this is a great game.
Well, it's like, how did your first game go? And he'd got this like dump about like this mini rant about how bad it was, and I'm like, I can kind of see why your body language is so like,
tense and anger.
This is not going to be a fun game. And it wasn't, but brilliant. It wasn't awful. He tried his best to get out of that mindset, but it just sets a tone, doesn't it?
Happens.
Yeah.
Any more?
Yeah, a couple from the Discord. So Krellin, he played in doubles game at the LGT, played into two guys who were from quite a well-known team I'm not going to name, but they were drunk, and he said they became argumentative.
Isn't like half the UK teams that we've got, like they always come in a bit drunk.
But I mean, you can be a happy drunk or an aggressive drunk, and these guys were not happy drunks. They argued over line of sight, even though he got the laser pointer out and showed that it was line of sight.
Come on, laser pointers! I've literally just bought one myself.
Became very aggressive, swearing at them, dropping the C-bomb and stuff like that, calling them the C-bomb. So eventually they went, right, we'll go and get a judge. And then but while they were bringing the judge back, the judge spotted these guys moving the terrain to try and prove that they were right.
No way! Yes.
I mean, it's really bad behaviour. All of that
what
stuff.
A shit team.
So I mean, the judge made them forfeit the game and yellow carded them for that, which is the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
But that's you don't need that in your life, do you?
That pleases me so much. For a team to do that as well, let alone anybody else. Get up.
I mean, anybody can say, my argument used to always be like, some people would just be like, I'm a real arsehole when I'm drunk. My argument would always be, you're not. I think you're either an arsehole or you're not. Whether you're drunk or not doesn't make any difference.
The drunkenness just elevates who you are.
I think so. It drops your inhibitions.
Brilliant.
Funnily enough, that guy was Krellin was saying like they very much treat it like you did, so it became a joke. So for the rest of that tournament, because this story obviously got around quite quick.
It circles fast in
every
tournaments.
time that these guys were passing friends that they knew or acquaintances in the tournament scene, they were all dropping the C-bomb at each other like just like as a joke. Turning it around and making it something that you can laugh at is the way to do it.
But again, if you're one of these guys, you will most likely become a butt end of a joke. So I'm glad.
I mean, I've never had that experience where it's got got that. It's escalated that far.
No, not that far, that fast.
That's
Like,
got to be quite rare.
It's more beautiful that they got found out by the judge. To literally see them be like, oh yeah, you can't see us now. It's like, no, you just done it.
I mean, I don't know what
Absolute
they must have
nutties.
been really drunk, because that is a terrible one. Another one, Articulate Savage, his friend got him into 40k by donating a bunch of Necrons, which is really nice.
Sure.
But then he went round to play his friend for his very first game, and his friend put a Tantalus on the table, which is a giant Forge World boat that's in the Dark Eldar. It's got all, like, with all the guns.
Right.
And just went exactly as you would expect.
Just mowed them
so
down.
he'd be like me giving you like a bunch of warriors and scarabs and immortals,
Sure.
and then bringing just knights or something, because you can't kill them.
Because I can't get through them.
Yeah.
Oh, bloody hell.
Yeah. So that
poor guy.
Yeah. I mean, it's a weird one, that, isn't it? Because the guy's obviously nice.
Here's all the weak units.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to play my meta filthy list. Let's play.
He's been nice enough to get you into 40k, but then your first experience isn't the best, is it?
That's nice.
Scott the Pinger, we played Tower into Demons. The opponent complained about infiltrators. So Scott was got the roll off. So he was basing he put his infiltrators out there, and you can move them. Obviously, unit coherency is 2 inches.
Sure.
And this guy insisted that you had to be in base-to-base contact, which is not true. And then when Scott, for an easy life, like we just talked about there, a lot of nice people will just say okay, just to avoid the hassle.
Sure.
And then when this guy put his infiltrators down, he didn't put them in base-to-base contact. So, I mean, Scott had even shown this guy the rule, and the guy had still refused to back down. It comes back to what we were saying before. Like, it's not necessarily about, well, at that point, it's beyond getting a rule wrong. It's somebody trying to bully you into getting a rule wrong.
It's like gaslighting you.
It is really,
literally just being like, you can't do that, and then immediately doing it. You're like, oh, it's fine. So it's in my rules. I can do it. Shut up.
And he said apart from that, he was a great opponent. Even helped him avoid gotcha moments and stuff. But that again. All of these early game things really ruin the vibe.
It sets off to a bad start.
You can be as nice as you like after that, but you've already shown me who you are at the beginning. Yeah,
and it's because you're winning now, most likely, that you're being nice.
Yeah,
happens a lot.
Last couple ones I want to quickly run through. Our Scabythrax was playing a tournament game running out of time, and the opponent initially agreed to evenly split the last 20 minutes, which is nice, but then used up 16 of those 20 minutes for his turn, leaving our friend with only 4. And he also then refused to talk through the last round. So
I always
because he was winning, and then while this discussion was going on, luckily, like you were saying, a judge was circling.
Yeah,
kind of. He must have seen that something was going off, listened into this, intervened without being asked, and said, "No, you must talk it through."
See, that's a good judge.
He talked it through and then awarded the win to Scabythrax.
That's a good judge. Yeah, because sometimes judges just say dice down. Time's ended, dice down, yada yada.
I think it depends. I've seen judges sometimes that will just kind of sit there, and you have to go on. They're kind of passive judges, if you like. They will sit at the back, and you have to go on to the table and present them with an issue, and then they'll come over. But in the best judges are the ones, like you say, that are wandering around, keeping an ear out. They're alive to these issues, and they kind of squash them before they happen, which is great.
It is very good, very nice.
And our friend Lee also mentioned in Discord, like he's had a couple of the issues where played into people that have just whined throughout the game. Even when they beat him, like, I hate playing into this army.
It's like you've won. Shut up. Like, just enjoy the game.
I don't know how to deal with this unit and all this. And like, but you just beat me by 30 points. So
and they're like, I should have won by more. I wish it was 50. It's like, I can strangle you.
But yeah, I mean, we asked the YouTube community as well. There's a couple of bullet points there. I don't know if you want to run through these, but
I certainly can. So what's this? A lot of YouTube community had a lot of them
had not had a negative experience.
That's crazy on YouTube.
Yeah,
crazy.
I mean, normally but I was really pleased to read that a lot of players had not had a negative experience.
Most of them had a really good experience on YouTube, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
others try to mitigate negativity. I think that's a really good thing.
Oh yeah,
just to get coming in with a positive mindset, even if someone's negative. Briefly mentioned before, but not stooping to their level. Maybe just maintaining the same energy, not the same energy, sorry, maintaining a positive energy throughout will kind of convert them to a degree, make it a bit more wholesome.
And it also stops them in kind of infecting you with the bad vibes to some degree. You can still play your game and have your fun to some degree.
Because you don't want this negativity to then spill into your next game and then your future games. So I think keeping positive mentality is a probably really good one. The other one, Jeremy Bell tracks how many ones both players roll in a game when they get to track the bar. I like that.
I absolutely love that.
So it's like a negative turn into a positive to be like, oh, look how many ones I'm winning a bit of chocolate.
Yeah,
you know, I like it. Yeah, it's good.
And particularly, and it wasn't the case in Jeremy's case. He didn't. But if you have a player in your circle that likes to get salty about having bad dice rolls, then then changing that around to make them to give them a runners up prize. But if you roll the most ones or whatever, then that can take the sting out of that bad vibe as well. I think it's a really nice thing to do.
It's a very good way of doing it.
Which leads us on very nicely to the last point here, doesn't it?
Yeah, so just kind of keeping it wholesome.
Yes.
So you've had some bad times, but I just wanted to quickly mention a few little things.
Yeah, you've got some great points in here.
Yeah, basically just not everyone means to be a dick at the end of the day. You know, again, we mentioned it briefly before. You get the turn game 3, even game 4 and 5 on the following day. You're tired, you're exhausted. You're standing up for 9 hours. You know, on
it's
day
a long
1.
day.
It is a long day. Like people get things wrong. Just help each other at the end of the day. If you think something's wrong, get a judge. If you know you're right, just get the rule up and show them.
Yeah.
The app's gotten so much better recently.
One of the things I loved about this is it kind of reminded me is that you need to approach incidences in the right light and give your opponent the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
So the first time somebody gets a rule wrong or is a bit free with a movement or whatever, it's a gentle reminder, isn't it? What this video is about is not like going, aha!
Yeah.
It's almost
gotcha.
like
this entire video is a gotcha video. Captured you all toxic players out there.
But so I think that's really important. Is you're not in that person's shoes. We need to show a bit of empathy, at least to start with, and give them the benefit of the doubt.
100%.
Good.
Another point I want to raise is a bit close to our friend. Our friend, I won't call him out, but you know who you are. He in the morning times. He knows
he's not a morning person.
He's not a morning person. He has said it himself to me and a few other players that he's playing in game 1. He is so moody in game 1. It's just because he's tired. He wakes up. He's just knackered. He's not a morning person. He gets to the event, which typically you get there for like 8:30 in the morning time, and then you've got to obviously set up the terrain and such. By that point, he's tired. He's frustrated. He's just like, well, I want to play. So he's just a negative player at the very start. He's not a negative person.
He's not a negative person. He just has a bit of a grump on first thing, and then once he's worked through that, he's absolutely fine.
He's absolutely fine.
He's not that guy.
No, and that's it. So do you take that away? Like how do you take that away to be like, all right, you're not good kind of thing? I don't know.
You just have to.
Probably not.
No, you just that's it. It's and I don't want to like get too meta here, but you have to not be that guy by assuming your opponent's that guy as well. Do
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could just give them cut them some slack, a little bit of slack,
100%.
and then if the pattern emerges, that's when you're like, hang on a minute, I need to watch this person.
Yeah, it's like game 2, you can't still be tired.
Yeah,
unless you can. But realistically,
I mean,
come on. This
reminded me of like when we played Sisters of Eldar, and Lucy, who are Sisters of Eldar on Instagram. You should go and check them out. You played Ems against her Eldar, and I played Lucy. And you and Em were laughing because you two were like saying you were having like quite a game full of smiles and kind of quite chilled.
Yeah.
And the when you looked over at our table, it was quite serious and intense. But that's just how me and Lucy both play. We were having a whale of a time.
Yeah, we came over to I think it mentioned something. And then I think Em was saying something for like maybe like 30 seconds, and none of you were just
it's hyper focus.
And I was just laughing, being like, they're not listening to a single thing you're saying.
It's definitely an ADHD trait. But hyper focus. So sometimes again, like, and that tends to it depends on the game you're playing. So if it's a game where I'm winning by a lot of points or even losing by a lot of points, I'll often kind of come out of that mind state rather than a mindset a little bit and become a bit more chill. But I'm not trying to be aggressive or put my opponent off. I'm just trying to think really hard about how to win the game. So just because your opponent doesn't have a smile on their face doesn't necessarily mean that they're an arsehole. I am an arsehole, but that's not why. That's not an indicator.
Can confirm.
Good. And you got any more?
The last one's kind of what we talked about. Sometimes just taking a step back is what you just said.
Yeah, I think it's worth reiterating.
It's just nice. You might. I've seen. There was this clip there's this meme online where there's I think it was a cooking show, and then this lady just starts just shouting at someone, and then she just suddenly stops and goes, I need to calm down. This isn't me.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can just call yourself out and be like, tell you what, I was being a bit of a dick there. Sorry about that. let's continue.
Yeah.
You know, just taking a step back, realizing that you've overstepped, and then
I love that. Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
it owns up to it. I think it is a good way of doing it.
That's a great way to finish off, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But that's it. I think that's everything that we want to talk about, right?
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. It was an interesting discussion, and I hope I feel that we've approached that in a quite an upbeat and positive way.
As we always try to. Yeah,
there is some serious stuff in there that hopefully can help some people.
For sure.
Whether that's because you've got some of those traits or because you know people that've got some of those traits and don't know how to deal with them.
Yeah.
But I think
and
again,
you're probably doing stuff that you don't even realize. So hopefully this is pointing them out.
100%.
Yeah.
And a lot of this comes with experience, one way or another.
For sure.
But yeah,
Very nice.
If you've enjoyed that, let us know of your experiences, either good or bad, in the comments, or if there's anything that we've missed in terms of how to deal with these people, etc. Then let us know.
Mm-hmm.
But and beyond that, I think we would like to. We mentioned them in before. We've got a lovely community on Discord, so you want to come and join us?
Absolutely. Obviously, Discord, come and join. We've got loads of things in there to talk about lore stuff, pictures.
It's quite active.
Gallery. It's very good. It's very good. On top of that, obviously, we've got the Patreon and YouTube members. Massive thank you to all you guys. I'll have your names on screen. Again, we're saving our pennies up for more equipment. So everything will be very much appreciated. So thank you so much for your support.
If you want to join us, we've got the link for YouTube memberships in the description, and we'll put the Patreon link is on our socials as well, so you can find it there.
Lovely stuff. Perfect.
Good. Well, thank you. Great way to round off our recording this weekend. Hope you've enjoyed that, and we'll be back soon with another video.
Thank you.